the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, your host, and this is the Week in Men's Rights, where we talk about interesting stuff that's happened in the world of the MRAsphere, is what I'd like to call it, or anyone that is let's say, a true advocate for fairness in the sort of larger cultural gender discussion. So I am joined currently by Elizabeth Hobson, as well as Natty, and I assume Miles is with you, Natty, right? As always, Natty's baby is in tow. Yes,
he's asleep.
But he's asleep. But he may chime in with opinions, which is why his little badger is on the screen there. Karen will be with us a little bit later. She's not here right now, but she also has some interesting news that we're gonna hopefully get into when Karen gets on. So thanks, guys, for joining us on the show. Please hit the like button if you could. It really helps us out with our analytics. And be sure to be prepared to add commentary as you like. So first, it's apparently been a really exciting time for justice for men and boys, which is why I'm talking to Elizabeth and Natty. I have this article displayed on the screen that goes as follows. I'm just going to read the headline, and then we'll get the scoop from Elizabeth or Natty, depending, because they're on their. You got to bear with us. They're on their phones, and they're on the train. Do you guys call it the train? Yeah, and they're on the train, and so they might drop because as the train passes through tunnels. So if so, I may have to reference the article itself. So, what was your day like today, Elizabeth? How did everything go?
It went eventfully and all right. It was a little stressful at points and
Yes? Elizabeth? See, this is one of those times where, they're probably passing through a tunnel. Oh, there she is.
Oh, you lost us?
No, I did for a second, but you're back now. Go ahead.
Okay, so we put out a message on our blog inviting people to meet us at a pub in Cambridge before our talks. And I was sitting there with a couple of guys, including Richard, and this woman kept coming in and out and looking at our table, eyeballing our table. And then a little later, Mike and Natty arrived, and the lady came back with some friends and some milkshakes.
Oh my goodness.
Mm.
And so the article goes, J4MB leader doused in milkshake at Weatherspoons. Anti-feminist group Justice for Men and Boys were gathering prior to an event at Mill Lane lecture rooms this evening. Members of the anti-feminist group Justice for Men and Boys were milkshaked by activists this afternoon in the Regal. Two individuals were observed throwing McDonald's milkshakes over members and supporters of the organization, including leader Mike Buchanan, as the group met at the Regal prior to an event set to be held in the Mill Lane lecture site this evening. Did Elizabeth and Natty, are you guys milkshake free? Can you be marked safe from milkshakes, or did they just get Mike Buchanan, or what?
So I was at the edge of the table where they leaned over. So there was two of them. There was a young lady and a young man. And I named him Che Guevara because he had that kind of Che Guevara shaggy hair socialist look. Call
him Shake Guevara.
Oh.
Shake Guevara, there we go. And the young lady was like a kind of very, 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 very skinny, no body fat at all, and no weight. Quite petite, and she had kind of short brown hair. She also looked quite stereotypically socialistic to me.
Very Laurie Penny.
Worse than Laurie Penny. Worse.
Oh,
honestly.
wow.
She looks like she lives in a squat. Anyway, that's what I thought. That's when I looked at
Yeah,
like,
well, I got a couple of drops on my jacket, and I was the other end of the table. I was actually holding Miles at the time, and there was
yes.
quite a kind of furore when it all kicked off, and he got quite upset. Actually, I could feel his little heart just pounding.
Aw.
Yeah. And this is the
Yeah.
thing. What happened was that Elizabeth was holding Miles at one end of the table, and I walked over to the other end to say hello to people. And then that's when these two people turned up to throw the milkshake. So I wasn't holding Miles, and I wasn't I wasn't anywhere close to him. And so they leaned over.
Wait.
my
Natty's going
head
robotic. Elizabeth, can you
to
talk?
pour the milkshake
Oh, there
onto
she is.
Mike and onto another.
Ah, I'm sorry. We're
It's
losing.
Hey, I can tell this part. It's her line.
Yeah.
But
Yo, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah, we're losing Natty.
I'm holding on to Miles, and Natty is right near where the milkshake is thrown, and our cameraman takes off after them, but he's got a bad back, and so it's not long before he's like creased up in the road, and Natty's like, I can catch her. And makes haste.
Well, but basically, I was kind of, because they leaned over me, right? So in a way, they kind of did it over my back. So I was literally, for a split second, I was like, "What's going on here?" Like in my head, I didn't understand what was going on. So when I leaned forward, we are now approaching London King's Cross. All right, sorry. I sort of, as soon as I saw them running off, and I realised what happened, and I turned the corner, and I saw Tom fall to the ground because he had a bad back. Mm-hmm. In my head, I just had a split second, and I just thought, you know what? She's small, she's skinny. I could catch her, you know. And she had a good distance on me already, and she'd already sort of turned the corner. And I just thought, fuck it, I'm just gonna go. So I just legged it, and the other guy was running. I was like chasing both of them on my own for a while, and then he turned a corner somewhere, and I kept chasing her, and she turned a corner. She's tried to hide in this kind of like alcove of a kind of like, because it's in Cambridge, so there's a lot of old architecture, and it's like kind of like a alcove of an old building sort of. And I caught her around the side, and I just kind of like dragged her back by her bra strap and just kept shouting at her, saying, "Did you throw the milkshake? Do you think I'm a fascist? You need to stay here. I'm calling the police." Yeah. And then someone else turned up. This random guy in the street was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You know, what's going on?" And the girl was saying to him that I was assaulting her, but I wasn't. But that's what she was saying. And then he kind of stepped in, and then our friend turned up, and then Jordan turned up, and then the security turned up. There we go.
And the moral of the story is, if she was a real non-bra wearing feminist, she never would have got caught by Natty.
That's true. Well, to be fair, I did have her by her arm at some point too. She was quite skinny, so she was quite easy to apprehend. Like, you know, she wasn't a Landwell, so you know, I was in luck.
Oh,
seriously.
God. Like, I just, like, I don't even know what to say about this. It's like, you just come, you yell fascist, you throw a milkshake, you run away, and then you're just like, yeah, nobody's actually gonna follow me. Nobody's actually gonna chase me down and apprehend me.
Well, you're fighting fascists, so why would they?
Yeah.
What's the matter? No. Don't they? What are they? Nazi sympathizers? Like.
So the moral of the story is like, okay, were the police called and were these people was this woman arrested, or?
So what happened was when my friend turned up.
Natty dropped out. Oh, she's back.
Oh, now she's back.
Okay, go ahead, Natty.
Let me start again. Yeah. So my friend turned up, and then Jordan turned up, and then security turned up, and Jordan called the police, me and the girl got separated because I wasn't really letting her go. I went full on what I call South London mode.
She is so South London.
And so I just kind of, I was like, no, I'm not letting this bitch go. And the security kind of like had to really talk me down to let go of her. And then eventually I did. And he was like, look, I'm not going to let her go. I will keep her here. And I was like, that's great. I had the whole thing on video. So when I sort of stopped her, I realized she was so like slight that I could actually get my phone out during this whole thing, and I did.
Wow, that's what that's why we need to get over to a low carb, high protein diet, everybody. By the way, just before, I know this is completely unrelated, big tangent. I don't do this very often, but interestingly enough, my wife brought this to my attention. Facebook has been removing posts that make the argument for low carb, low carb diets. So that it's
that's
absolutely.
Fucked up.
I know, absolutely.
Like my son was like he's 16. He was 6'2" and he was 235 pounds and chubby as fuck. And then he just cut starch out of his diet. He cut empty sugars, like Coca-Cola and Gatorade and stuff out of his diet, and he cut starch, so bread and potatoes and rice and all of that out of his diet.
Noodles.
And he doesn't pasta. He doesn't avoid carbs altogether, but he just minimizes them and eats a high protein, high fat diet. And he's lost like 35 pounds. He's like under 200 pounds now. He's slimmed right down. He's grown another inch. He's just like, he lost 5 fucking inches off of his waist the last time I had to order him pants. And this is all in the course of like 3 months. And he's never hungry.
I'm sorry, that was a big tangent, but what I'm saying is that they're not just taking down people who express anti-feminist views, centrist views, conservative views, classical liberal views. Also, people who are, they're like pro sort of keto, carnivore, low carb diet people. Apparently that's all under the same alt-right umbrella. But anyway, so Natty, the woman,
that's really interesting.
I know, isn't it? I think I seriously think there's something to it. Yeah. I think there's something to it, but that's a whole other thing. I mean, we're thinking about it's all coming from the same place, and I think that there is a unifying moral structure that sort of ties all that together, but that's a big conversation. So Natty grabbed the woman who was so small that she had enough time to get her phone out. I had this image in my head, Natty, and I see now by the pictures it's not the case. But when you told me that you got the culprit and took some pictures, I imagined a woman, you, full on pregnant as hell with a baby in one arm, grabbing a girl, and you have your phone out at the same time. And I was like, wow, I said, you know what? It's not outside the bounds of reality. If you know Natty, I just had this image that was really funny. But
she is literally a Hindu goddess.
Yeah, right. Like 6 arms.
Shiva.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna show some pictures. This is a picture of 2 of the protesters, I believe. There's a person, I'm not going to assume any genders here, holding a sign that says milkshake those misogynists. And there's a picture of the milkshake. And then there's another woman in a black dress. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said woman. A person in a black dress holding a megaphone. And who are these people? Were they 2 of the protesters?
Yeah, so can I point out the girl? Have you just showed the one with the girl with the pink hair?
No, not yet.
No, it's the black.
Oh, okay, no. Right,
the
the girl with the black dress was her friend, and yeah, she was one of the ringleaders of the protest. The one with the black dress. Sorry, no, we're not on they yet.
Okay.
No. No, honestly, we'll tell you about that in a second when you look at another picture. But when I apprehended this milkshake thrower, we were there for over an hour, and me and her and Jordan and this other guy that was with us ended up having a long kind of conversation with her in the end. And she started trying to interview us, and she was asking all kinds of questions. She was like, what do you think about Port Elam? What do you think about Rouge? And what do you think about abortion? And yada. And she wouldn't answer many questions, but in the end we kind of had a laugh with her, which was quite interesting. And then there was another guy there who was this kind of university worker, because he had on a lanyard, and then he told us that he was a lecturer in philosophy. And I was trying to get information out of him, but he was being very, very secretive, and he just kept saying how he needed to stay with us because he was protecting his students, and he didn't know if I'd assaulted her or not.
He said kids.
And I was just like, no, she assaulted my friends, and she tried to assault me, but I've apprehended her. And he was very, very suspicious. And then what had happened was he started texting on his phone, and he was texting the Che Guevara guy, who suddenly turned up out of nowhere after we'd been waiting for a while for the police to turn up. And then he tried to kind of like get him and the girl to run away. So this lecturer guy was kind of in on the whole thing. And then I just kept filming and followed them around the corner until they ran into their student halls.
I got his voice on recorder.
And then that's when we met them, which I'll talk about in a minute. They. Yeah.
Pronouns, not pronouns.
All right.
Okay. So I'm gonna go through some other pictures, and I'll let Natty or Elizabeth sort of explain some context, because I was sent these. So here's another image. This is Natty with the woman in the black. I think it's the same woman in the black dress, and the woman with pink hair, or person. I'm sorry, person of undisclosed gender with pink hair.
So the person with pink hair, they told me that their gender pronoun was them, they, and their. And so
she got no titties.
And she also, sorry, they. I have to stop saying she.
Yeah, stop it, Natty. Are you trying to go to jail?
I know.
Hey, quiet.
They had an Ivy Park vest on, and you could see where their breasts had been cut off.
They got no titties.
Whoa, really?
No titties, as Richard's saying.
No titties.
It was quite harsh. Yeah.
It was really odd looking at it, to be honest.
Wow. Okay, and then I have another image. Looks like a crowd. This is one of the ones that Natty sent me. It's all from behind. There's a bunch of the backs of people going into a doorway. There's someone in what appears to be a rascal or electric wheelchair of some kind. What's going on here?
Inclusive.
All right. So, sorry, can I just, before you tell this bit, the person they and the lady with them in the black, they just sort of hung around outside the student halls for ages on their WhatsApp, just basically trying to eavesdrop on our conversation that I was having. And then there was a group of them there that sort of turned up and hovered around for a while. And I knew they were plotting something, but I couldn't work out what they were plotting because they kept hiding their phone. And so I kind of started chatting to them a little bit, which is why I found out that the one with the pink hair likes to be called they. The one with no titties, yes, Richard. And stop that. Sorry, you keep saying no titties.
I get it. She had what her breast removed. It's cool. Go ahead. So eventually we hooked up again. We realized that the police were not going to turn up, even though the university security spoke to them, and the security guard also told us he knew who those two people were as well. He could identify them. Yeah. But the police decided not to turn up, even though we got the crime number and reported it. Anyway, then we went to the talk, and Elizabeth can tell you the rest. All right, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I mean, Lady in Black follows us to the venue on her phone the whole time. And then we're just kind of congregating outside the venue, having a chat to our kind of friends and supporters. And then, like, this crowd of like 30 students kind of files in down the bottom of where we're standing. And one of them, this woman, walks up and stands between where I'm standing and the door. And I looked at her and I went, "You're going to block the doorway, aren't you?" And so I kind of nipped in to where the doorway was, and then the whole crowd of them like files in front of the doorway, links arms, and starts singing all these songs. They were singing "There's More Than Us Than You." How did that one go? That was quite tuneful, that one.
There's more than us than you. There's more than us than you. Oh, am I making that?
Hi
don't know,
ho the
that's a
Mario.
fun song, yeah.
Something like that, like a nursery rhyme type.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hate misogyny.
Well, I guess
I-
that's better
yes,
than,
okay.
you know, the usual stuff. At least they're trying something new.
They're trying something different than hey hey ho ho. This yada yada's got to go.
Yeah.
And there was something about power, and there was something about, "Oh, Cambridge, can you hear us?"
Mm-hmm. Still, was it intimidating? I think the intention was to intimidate you. I mean, when you say there's
Not
more of
really.
us, there's more of us than you. It's almost like saying if we decided to remove you with violence, you can't stop us. It's like we have the numbers,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you know, I was standing in front of the door and the security wouldn't let me in, so I was trapped between the door and like the protesters. They were like right in my face, all shouting.
Yeah.
And you know, I was kind of just smiling at them and blowing kisses and stuff, because it's quite funny if you just stare at someone and smile, even if they hate you, they can't help but smile back. So
Yeah.
I was getting smiles back of them, but honestly, like, my heart was racing.
So
I wasn't prepared
you
to see it.
did the Covington Catholic schoolboy tactic of smirking in the face of.
Yes.
She totally did. And here's the thing. Anybody who has actually been around Elizabeth Hobson, you know, because I know that the camera lies. It lies all the time, right? But anybody who has actually met her in person knows she's like tiny. She is the tiniest woman, bar two, that I have ever met. And so the fact that she was willing to actually stand up in front of a crowd of people and just smile at them, Nick Sandman style, is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, if I was going to like accurately represent Elizabeth on the screen here, I'd have to do this, and then just to make the point, I'd have to also change Natty because she's actually taller than you think. So this would probably be more accurate representation, but it does throw things off a bit.
Would, yeah.
All right. But anyway, so that happened. I'm displaying the picture that you sent me.
I mean, talking about the police as well, not only did they not show up to where Natty was, but Jordan was on the phone to them, Jordan Holbrook, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've been to the scene of the crime and like spoken to people." And he came back and he said, like, "Have they?" And we were like, "Oh, well, they haven't spoken to us. Maybe they spoke to the manager," because the manager was saying, "Oh, we've got CCTV as clear as day. You know, they can find out who they are in an instant." And so he went and spoke to them and they said, "No, they've not been." So they just lied to him on the phone.
That is also interesting. But
the proctors, who are like the people who kind of look after the university, they're like the bosses in the university, were coming out and asking people for their IDs. And they were saying, "We need to know your name and what college you come from. And if you don't show us your ID and we find out who you are, you will get kicked out of the college." Because they have to show ID on university premises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were there did anyone get kicked out? Do you know?
No, they didn't actually kick them off the premises at that point. And nor did they after they eventually they let me in to go and set up with Mike and our cameraman. and then they started letting people with tickets in through the back entrance, like walking them around the back entrance.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
like,
one
the-
other thing, sorry to add,
oh yeah,
was when the milkshake thing happened. There was a photographer with the
Miles is up.
culprits. He is, sorry. And he took the action shot, right, that you can see in their article, and
Oh, yeah.
he turned up later on.
This picture.
My mood.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have
Anyway,
to.
so that guy was with the people that did the milkshake crime. So you know they were working together.
yeah, and
Mm.
it's
And he
credited
worked for Varsity newspaper, student newspaper.
Yeah.
So they went there to make a story almost, because they had to throw the milkshake and then get a picture of it, right? So it wasn't like, and then they went and wrote it. Did all the stuff that you guys were just describing with the protesters and the outside the door, was that after or before the milkshaking took place?
Before, sorry, after. Sorry.
After. And is that, because I've seen, actually, you know what I was going to say about this milkshaking thing? I don't know if there's more information you want to give, but one thing I do want to say about this is my first thought when I heard that this happened was, we made it, fam. We made it because because you guys are getting the same treatment that like other people that are like they have a larger presence on the internet have also gotten. I mean, you're basically among people, like you have good company amongst people like Nigel Farage, Carl Benjamin, and Tommy Robinson. Actually, Tommy Robinson's graduated to Rocks, I believe, but nonetheless, he got milkshaked too, and so like you find yourself in good company. This is how you're upsetting the NPCs, the robots. They're all just following their programming, now it's the thing to do.
That's how Mike feels. And we were prepared for it. We both brought spare changes of clothes. I didn't need mine, but he needed his.
So he thought that was going to happen?
Yeah, we planned for it, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I mean,
that's what you do.
Sargon has been done 4 times in like the last week and a half or something.
I thought that Sargon himself said it was only twice, and that the mainstream media has been lying about him. Yeah, like in a video he made a few days ago, he said, "Yeah, they're saying it's been 4 times." It's like, no, it's been 2 times with milkshakes and once with a fish, and the fish doesn't count. So
Don't have any, sorry.
But
I missed that.
A kipper.
I don't know. He had a bird land on his lapel to pick off part of that fish.
That's a good omen. Yeah.
Called the bird a cheeky bastard. Yeah. No, it's like I think they've attempted 4 times to douse him with a milkshake, but they've only actually hit him twice.
Well, it takes a lot of strength to throw a milkshake, Karen. You can't do it on soy.
And aiming is really it's these SJWs, they throw like girls, right?
Yeah, they do. Okay, so anyway, let me see, what else should we go through, because we got other stories, but I want to know what other info of interest we got.
We then just get into the venue, and my phone is running out of battery, FYI. If I cut out, that'll be what it is. But I mean, I've got to hand it to them. They had some serious stamina. Like, they kept up beating all these pots and pans throughout the entirety of our 2.5-hour presentations. And it was quite distracting, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But we got through our speeches, and people seem to appreciate our effort, and but unfortunately,
I think it's just gonna get you guys more attention. I think I think if he doesn't know, Sargon should know that you guys got milkshaked and Mike Buchanan got milkshaked as well. I hope Mike Buchanan is recovering okay. It's a good thing you guys have universal health care. Go ahead.
On our way out from the venue, we got escorted out the back to avoid the protesters. and we bumped into a father and son. So the son was like 16, and they'd been at the talks, and on their way out they'd bumped into the protesters, and some guy had been like right up in his son's face screaming abuse at him.
Oh, that's right.
And so the dad says, you're harassing a minor. At which point 3 of the protesters grabbed him, and all the others started laying into him, and he was kicked, and he was yelled at and hit.
Holy shit.
So he's they called the police, and they've made statements to the police, and he's going to give us a statement to put on the J4MB website to tell everybody exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But I feel really, really bad about that, because I've got sons, and I would be so fucking livid if anyone behaved like that towards my son.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's outrageous. And the ridiculous thing is, they had no way of knowing that those people found anything of interest or use, or thought that our talks were valid in any way. They could have just been there out of pure curiosity, but they still felt entitled, just because these people had heard what we had to say, to assault them.
We live in a crazy world where apparently, wanting to have discussions around either your, let's say in the case of people like Sargon, you have, discussions around freedom of speech, or around, your country's sovereignty, or you want to like advocate for the issues facing young men and boys, or just men and boys in general. And it is read as something that will lead to violence against women. And so it must be responded to with violence, while they also call for violence. Because the thing is that this milkshake thing, there's a defense that goes out there saying this is not violent, right? It's just a milkshake. It's not going to hurt you, you snowflake. Stop crying. It's not. It's just a bit of trolling. It's just a bit of shame, essentially, to make you look bad. But the problem is that it is assault. It's not like obviously it's not a rock or a grenade. It's a milkshake. But you see, the point of it is to show people that you can, like, this action is justified against people that you disagree with. Here's a super chat. I'll make my point with this. I have some super chats. I got one from Mr. Roboto, and for $2, and he says, did anyone throw shamrock shakes? If so, I'm there. And then, well, thank you for that. Tyler Preston for $5 says, do you know that feminists would lose their shit if it was a woman who got a milkshake thrown at her face? Well, actually, if the woman who got a milkshake was a woman that they disagree with, like if it was thrown at Natty or Elizabeth, they wouldn't have a problem with that. It's about women it's about people they disagree with. However, if you wanted
Natty and I are sub women.
What was that?
I said Natty and I are sub women.
Yeah, you're not women, you're sub women. However, let's say, because I think that's an interesting point that Tyler Preston makes that we can like kind of look into a little bit. Let's say that someone threw a milkshake at a feminist woman and they got it on tape just to make a point about how people would react to it. Okay? If you did that, you could make a point. But the thing is that people who are sort of anti-feminists or like MRA types like us, we wouldn't do that. Not even to a feminist woman, not even to make a point, because it's something that I think that we're above, more or less. And because we also don't think it's a good idea to try to use, these tactics against other people. And it wouldn't work out in our favor either. So it's kind of like a bad idea, but they don't care. They don't have any scruples about this. And again, go ahead.
I'm just waiting for the first person to be milkshaked who has a deadly milk allergy.
Yeah, really. I was thinking the same.
Then we can discuss like how potentially harmful it is. It's like, oh yeah, no, and when somebody spits on you, it's not a big deal. Yeah, unless they have hepatitis C or AIDS or something like that, right? Yeah, no, it's like there's a reason why you're not allowed to do stuff like that. And it is because even if 99 times out of 100 there's no physical harm, that one time out of 100, it may actually result in serious harm.
Sure.
So.
I remember they were throwing piss at Lauren Southern a few years ago, so maybe we need to get on her level.
Yeah, no, and it's just like, and eggs and shit like that, and Jeremy Corbyn was egged a while ago, and the egg thrower got 30 days or something.
He got a month in jail. Yeah, and nothing for milkshakes apparently. And it was so and I think that the point of it is, again, it's not about necessarily the violent act itself of throwing a milkshake. However, it's about the intimidation, which is backed by real violence. I mean, Antifa has actually said, and I couldn't find the meme, but I saw it, that you go, basically it's like testing the boundaries of what people will accept. So you start by throwing milkshakes, and if it looks like the general public is okay with it and it becomes like a mainstream idea, then you step it up a notch and you throw rocks, or you throw, then you step it up a notch again, you start throwing Molotovs. I mean, they're already throwing rocks at Tommy Robinson now, and so eventually it will get to the point where it's like, okay, now we need to off people. So, and I know that sounds like I'm making like a ridiculous slippery slope argument, but I think that this is the point of this kind of activity. So I'm glad that we're getting this kind of attention from people, but just be aware, this isn't just a laughing matter. This is backed by, I think, a threat of real violence down the line if we find this kind of intimidation to be acceptable, which it shouldn't be. So
I agree, but what really amazes me is, at the end of the day, it's a kind of gross kind of thuggery that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when about students and people who live in Cambridge, and Cambridge is like, the university in particular is such a privileged place, and those people should feel fucking really lucky to be there, and some kind of debt of gratitude to carry on the values that have the place has been built on, with this kind of search for truth, and the civility and all those kind of beautiful progressive things. And yet they don't. They're there and they feel angry and aggrieved. It's like, where the fuck do they get off, man?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's like Lori Penny saying I'm oppressed. Like, didn't she go to an expensive private school, and she was educated at the top tier school in post-secondary, right? And she's like, I'm so oppressed as a woman, and it's like, how the fuck do you figure? Like, I'm a fucking waitress. Laura I'm a retired waitress.
Speaking fee for charity. So at that time, when she tried to debate Hitchens, Hitchens gave up his fee for charity, but she wouldn't.
Oh yeah. I remember that. It wasn't Hitchens. It was that older gentleman. Yeah, I remember that one.
And he essentially said, "How dare you? How dare you?" This event almost didn't go off.
Yeah.
Because you insisted. You insisted on your multiple $1,000 speaker's fee, and the event organizers had to. You're the only person being paid to stand on this stage right now. You entitled bitch.
Yeah.
The audience
I love David Starkey for that. That was so funny.
Yeah. That's classic. Okay, so any final thoughts on this milkshake story? Otherwise, we're gonna move on. Natty, any final thoughts?
No, okay, we're good.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, Richard did asking me to mention this interview I did with him, which we're going to finish next week.
All right.
Pass it on to you, Brian.
Excellent. Yeah, get it to me, and I'll put it up on the channel, and link to the original source wherever it ends up going. So be on the lookout for that, gents. Okay, so now we're gonna move on. Again, if you haven't hit the like button, please hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and hit the bell for notifications, because sometimes YouTube doesn't tell people when we go live, and you guys don't want to miss out on all this fun. So next up is a story that I think Karen really wanted to talk about. And this is about Naomi Wolf. So I have original Guardian article here. I also have the clip from Twitter if we need to play some of it out.
Yeah,
but...
no, we need to play the clip. We need to play the clip.
Okay.
We do.
All right, all right. So,
Yeah.
Do you want me to just play the clip and then, or do you want to set it up at all, or what?
Okay, so somebody tweeted at me this thing saying, watch Naomi realize that her, I don't remember what the exact wording of the tweet is, realize that her entire freaking premise is destroyed because she misunderstood a legal term.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is blunder over Naomi Wolf admits blunder over Victorians and sodomy executions. So I'll go ahead and play some of this clip. I'm going to go back a little bit, and I got to raise the volume. I probably
play the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll play the whole thing. I may have to banana it, but it is off of Twitter, so it's probably okay.
You get sentences, as I mentioned, of penal servitude for 10 or 15 years. And I found like several dozen executions, but that was, again, only looking at the Old Bailey records and the crime tables.
Several
regionally.
Dozen executions.
Correct. And this corrects a misapprehension that is in every website, that the last man was executed for sodomy in Britain in 1835.
I don't think you're right about this. One of the cases that you look at that's salient in your report is that of Thomas Silver. It says teenagers were now convicted more often. Indeed, that year, which is 1859, 14-year-old Thomas Silver was actually executed for committing sodomy. The boy was indicted for an unnatural offence, guilty, death recorded. This is the first time the phrase unnatural offence entered the Old Bailey records. Thomas Silver wasn't executed. Death recorded. I was really surprised by this, and I looked it up. Death recorded is what's in, I think, most of these cases that you've identified as executions. It doesn't mean that he was executed. It was a category that was created in 1823 that allowed judges to abstain from pronouncing a sentence of death on any capital convict whom they considered to be a fit subject for pardon. I don't think any of the executions you've identified here actually happened.
Well, that's a really important thing to investigate.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah. No. Okay. So, and here's the thing, right? You go onto various websites, the Old Bailey website, right? And it essentially says death recorded is something that allowed the judges to get around having to apply the death penalty. So essentially, it allowed them, if the jury wanted to be lenient, if the jury was just like, yeah, no, like this isn't worth the death penalty, the judge could essentially say death recorded and then sentence them to a term of prison or allow them to walk, right? And so it's a legal term that is I agree. I can understand how somebody could misconstrue it just by looking at the words, but if you actually just go on Google, you find out that it means something completely different from sentence to death.
Yeah. Well, so people are wondering.
Oh, no. Keep going.
No.
Keep going.
Oh, yeah. Let's keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
What is your understanding of what death recorded means?
Death recorded. This is also from. I've just read you the definition of it there from the Old Bailey website. But I've got here a newspaper report about Thomas Silver, and also something from the prison records that show the date of his discharge.
The prisoner was found guilty and sentence of death was recorded.
Yeah.
But the jury recommended the prisoner to mercy on account of his youth.
See, I think this is a kind of. When I found this, I didn't really know what to do with it, because I think it's quite a big problem with your argument. Also, it's the nature of the offence here. Thomas Silver committed an indecent assault on a 6-year-old boy.
Ba-boom.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. No, and then he goes on to say that Thomas Silver was released after 2.5 years in prison and went on with his life. Right. And the records all show this. the newspaper clippings, and he essentially, then he called her out and he said essentially, okay, so I took several of the cases that you held up as executions for homosexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I looked into several of them, and the ones that I looked into, several of them that I looked into, that none of them involved consensual sexual activity. They were all sexual assaults. They were all sexual offenses. They were all rapes or statutory rapes or pedophilia or bestiality or, things like that. And so I just, after looking into a handful of the dozens, and finding what these cases were of men raping men, not of consensual homosexual relationships, right? And then the death recorded thing, I'm just having, and here's the thing too, right? Because here's what her premise, this is what her thesis is. This is what her thesis is that in the mid 1800s, there was a huge crackdown on homosexuality that was spurred by the patriarchy basically going, look, a diversion.
Yeah.
Right? That essentially the patriarchy was being called out on the misdeeds of heterosexual men by feminists, first wave feminists, and the patriarchy responded by essentially saying, oh yeah, no, we're not bad. Look at those gay guys over there. Let's clamp down on them.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, they were easing up on gay men. They actually created a category of I guess, essentially resolving capital offenses by saying, okay, this demands the death penalty, death recorded, right? And let's move on. And they can serve 6 months or 2 years or whatever, and then they can get out, right?
Yeah.
And so it was an easing up on homosexuality during that period, rather than a clamping down on it. So her entire premise, her entire thesis is completely debunked. It's like, this was a foundational premise of her thesis, which was that the patriarchy clamped down on homosexuality to distract politically activated women from their activism on behalf of women. This is exactly the same premise that she put forth in the beauty myth, which was that essentially, the beauty industry, which is all the CEOs of the cosmetics companies and the fashion companies are all men, right? They created this idea of Western beauty standards, which means, a waist to hip ratio that's attractive and symmetrical features and youth and clear unblemished skin and all of these things, signs of health and fertility in women, right? They actually brainwashed men in Western culture to find those things attractive. If they hadn't done that brainwashing, then professional soccer players would be beating a path to Madeleine Albright's door or Theresa May's door to have sex with her, right? Like, this is what she was essentially saying. And the reason she said that they did this, right, which is completely stupid to begin with, but the reason she said that they came up with this conspiracy to brainwash men is because women were becoming too politically active, and they needed to essentially create a situation in which women would become more obsessed with their looks and their weight and their wrinkles and and their hair color and all of that, over and above politics, right? So it was created as a diversion to distract women away from politics and to make them become obsessed with their own looks, right? And I'm just like, this is a recurring theme, obviously, in her work, is that and like, one of the most egregious errors in the beauty myth was she claimed that over 100,000 women a year in the US die from anorexia. Well, the reality is she forgot to carry the one, I guess, because 100,000 people, not just women, are diagnosed with anorexia per year in the United States, and something under 100 of them die per year. So, like, 100 women out of 360 million people die per year of anorexia, and this is apparently a it's an indicator of a systemic conspiracy on the part of patriarchal forces to distract women away from political action by making them obsess about their looks.
Yep.
It's bizarre. The entire thing is fucking bizarre. And the fact that he could find this on Google, this was not in some kind of secret vault, golden vault. Like I said on Twitter, it wasn't in some golden vault at the bottom of the ocean being guarded by sharks with freaking lasers in their foreheads. No, it was on a website.
Yep.
Accessible to anyone. She wrote a whole book about it, and she wrote, this was her Oxford PhD thesis, which she successfully defended. And nobody noticed.
They didn't bother to follow up. It's almost like they just took her at face value because feminism or something.
Yeah, because my narrative.
Yeah, because my narrative. Well, that is hilarious. You guys get it now? Naomi Wolf, live. They say that she admitted her blunder, but I think she had no choice.
Yeah, no, she really did not have a choice.
She was completely busted, and that was it. Like, the only thing you could do is say "oopsie" and just leave it at that. So, any other thoughts on this story? Because otherwise, I have one more. I wanna show you guys. Karen, Elizabeth or Natty?
I don't have any further thoughts on it. Okay. I'm just like, I'm surprised that this got past. Like, I'm not sure what her PhD is in. Maybe it's philosophy, not history.
Yeah.
So and so I like, maybe the people who were reviewing her work that she was defending her thesis against, maybe they are just not historians, right? Yeah. They're not historians of law. They're not historians of, they're not British historians. They're not anything like that. So maybe it was an easy error to overlook in favor of my narrative. And, honestly, I can understand, again, granted, I'll give her that, death reported sounds pretty sinister. It sounds like an execution when you see it on a docket, right? But the fact that she just kind of that nobody called her on it in her PhD thesis, and nobody called her on it. None of her editors and fact checkers, of this book that's coming out that's based on largely on this, is that's pretty egregious. That that nobody actually bothered to look into any of this stuff. So
yeah,
and that a radio show host spent like an hour or two
doing his homework before he talked to her. Yeah,
doing some research before an interview and went, oh fuck, what the fuck is this? Yep. Right, and he was so polite about it. Right, I found this and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it.
Yeah, kind of like how Columbo is at like the at the end of the third act. Like how Columbo's
and
forgive me, but I got one more question. I'm sorry, I'm slow, but there's just something that's just not adding up, and maybe I'm not the smartest guy, but maybe you can help me out. I'm sorry, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but that's how I think it just came across that way. But good stuff. Thank you, Karen. Natty, Elizabeth, do you guys have any thoughts on this story? Do you guys know much about it? Are they? I mean, I see. Oh, there she is.
Nothing to add. It's quite incredible, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something.
Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, Natty, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, no, that is incredible. Absolutely. I mean, it's not surprising, but sorry, who was the guy that called her out? I didn't get that part.
Sweet. His last name is Sweet. He's on Radio 3.
Yeah, Radio 3.
Martin Sweet?
Matthew Sweet.
Okay.
Matthew
Sweet. You see,
Yeah.
even though the BBC is quite, cut and SJW'd and whatnot here, you don't fuck with the historians. People, those guys, those
Yeah.
kind of guys, they know their shit.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
old
I
dudes
suppose,
on Radio 3 and Radio 4.
Oh yeah.
it must be quite a new experience for her as a feminist, though, because feminists don't get anything that they say challenged ever. Like, we grow up as people, in the men's rights movement, having every single little thing that we say picked apart. And so we look for the evidence and we're ready to, support it. But feminists just aren't.
Agreed, and that's really a sad thing, because it's like it really is essentially a situation where when you're going counterculture, when you're going counter the dominant narrative, which is feminism, right? You really have to do your homework. You really have to be absolutely 100% sure of what you say, and you have to be willing to essentially say, oh well, I apologize, I attributed that quote to the wrong person, or I got the year wrong, or whatever. I've never apologized for an opinion that I've made. I've only apologized for factual errors that I've made. Oh, my bad. It was 63%, not 66% type thing, right? But there's no way that you can keep every fact in your head completely uncorrupted. When you're looking at the number of statistics that we're expected to memorize and have on hand and be able to just pull out of our memory in any given situation, including names and the names of papers and the years they were published and all of that stuff, right? But we have to be so prepared to defend every single statement I make on Twitter. Like, things that I say on Twitter probably get more challenge than the things that she said in her Oxford PhD thesis.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
like
yeah.
they don't really peer review each other so much as see if the talking points match up to theirs, and they just leave. Oh yeah, this is good. I was just gonna say, I think some PhDs are much easier to get than others.
Yeah, which, speaking, I think my phone may well run out of battery very soon. But if I can squeeze it in, speaking of all this, Routledge, which is an academic publishing house, was meant to be publishing a book by William Collins of the Illustrated Empathy Gap website, which is, a fantastic resource for MRAs, especially in the UK, where he looks at studies and government statistics and takes them apart and finds out what they mean. And it generally means that men and boys are disadvantaged. But he was due to be publishing a book with them. And he sent in the first 9 chapters or something. And they said, this is fantastic. We can't wait to publish it. And then somehow, somewhere along the line,
somehow, yeah. And then now that they put the kibosh on the whole thing.
Yeah, but they wrote these reviews of it saying oh, it's all polemic and it's not academically sound and all of this stuff. And it's what, you're from the same fields where people are publishing those hope studies about the Mein Kampf one and the dog
park rape culture.
Yeah. All the grievance study stuff. Yeah, sure.
And there's absolutely no way that he's academically sound. He is an academic, and his work is fucking excellent. It's the gold standard, as Mike always says. But actually, that should be out within the next month, published by LPS Publishing, which is Mike's publishing house. So that's a good book to look forward to, everybody.
Oh wow! I'm glad that he's finding a publisher somewhere, but I'm just disgusted by the fact that a traditional academic publisher would essentially decline because of pressure from feminists, right?
And he made it a point of he made a point of not mentioning the word feminism nor the word gynocentrism in the whole text once, which is 700 pages.
Yeah.
But they still picked up on the fact that they called it anti-feminist, which is kind of true, but but it wasn't, it's not in a polemical way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It simply states facts, and the facts are anti-feminist.
Yeah, no, that's so typical these days, though, right? Like
Yeah.
there was oh God, there was a paper published by or submitted by a mathematician in the U.S. To a journal that, oh God, I forget what he was measuring. I think it was measuring sexual selection, right? And how essentially women control the whole dance of sexual selection. This is just like I'm just going by like my bare bones memory of this, right? And that this led to greater variability among the male population in terms of individual traits, and that this was something that you could prove not just by observation but by employing a mathematical model, right? That this is just how things are going to fall out, and yeah, the greater male variability hypothesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some woman from the University of Chicago caught wind of it and objected, and then she got a whole bunch of other people objecting to it. It was accepted for publication. It went through peer review. Everything was fine. It was scheduled to be published, and then the publisher changed their minds, unpublished it, and because of that, he can't publish this paper anywhere else because
Mm.
the journal itself owns the copyright and the distribution rights to it, and they essentially said, we're going to unpublish it, but we're not going to release the rights, right? So he has no recourse. This is a dead paper now. It's never going to be out there, and so he just put it out. I think he put it out for free, but he can't get it published. It's not something that can contribute to his career. He put it out for free because he wants people to know. But this is because there are women out there, feminist women, who are just like, no, you can't say that. Meanwhile, you have Daphne Joel, who did a study on she fed like 1,000 and something fMRI scans of human brains into an instrument that she created to detect whether there's actual sexual dimorphism between male and female brains. Is there a male brain? Is there a female brain? Right? She chose to actually analyze 10 structures in the brain that are not particularly dimorphic. So she excluded the ones that are extremely sexually dimorphic, like the corpus callosum, right? The link between the two hemispheres of the brain, which is much bigger in women than it is in men, and other ones like the visual cortex, which has a sexual function in men but not in women so much, and is a completely different shape, right? So she fed these MRI scans into her instrument, and she found that only 1% of human brains can actually be typed female or male, and therefore there's no such thing as a male or female brain. And I'm reading her study and I'm looking at the graphs and I'm like, but your graphs consistently say that male brains skew male on most criteria and female brains skew female on most criteria. And here we are in a world where something like when a trained pair of human eyes can sex a brain via an fMRI scan roughly 80% of the time, with 80% accuracy, right? And you're saying that, oh yeah, no, there's just no such thing because less than 1% of brains are 100% female or 100% male,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then she went on to into the press, right? So these were her conclusions in her study, which already disagreed with her data. Then she went into the press and said, no, human brains are a mosaic. And so there's really no such thing as a male brain or female brain. It's all a social construction. And anybody who actually would want to look and find differences between male and female brains is probably only doing it in order to justify discrimination. And so it's not. I find the entire topic uninteresting, and I find it actually to be objectionable because of this way that I think that the motivations that I think are behind people looking for sex differences in the brain. And so she actually exaggerated her stated results. There's no such thing as a male or female brain in the press, right? And then like 23 days later after her study was published and she went on this publicity tour, right? A bunch of critics of her study fed the facial morphologies of 3 species of New World monkeys into very distinct species of New World monkeys into her instrument and asked them to match photographs of the faces of various monkeys to the species. And her instrument could match species to photograph less than 5% of the time. And these are species that if you looked at them, if you had any kind of expertise, you could identify these monkeys, their species, almost every single time. Less than 5% of the time, it could identify match species to individual. And they concluded that she constructed her instrument to avoid detecting sex differences.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that got no play in the press. None whatsoever. It was 2 years later that I saw the first mainstream article that actually cited this to call her results into question. And I'm like, I've been talking about this for like 3.5 years.
Yep. So this was a thing that happened and it was great. And for a change, so thank you for this.
Oh, and she still has a job as head of the neuropsychology department of the University of Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Well. All right, so we're gonna move on to the last story. This one is super wholesome, guys, and but I just got to share it. This is a new ad. So I was talking to Elon, the owner of Egard Watches. Just talking to him back and forth. He's a great guy. He's gonna be coming to the ICMI, and he sent me a new ad that he put together. He makes the ads himself for the most part. Oh
God, that ad! At 6 o'clock in the morning. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I left a comment. Excuse me, I've got something in my eye.
Yep.
Oh, it was feels.
Yeah. So I want to share the ad with you guys. We're going to end this on a wholesome note. Unfortunately, Elizabeth dropped out. I guess her battery finally got around to oppressing her. But Natty is still here. Natty, you'll be able to hear the audio if you're not in a tunnel. Just know that most of the video, and this is for those of you guys who might be listening to us on iTunes or SoundCloud, most of the video is just, let's say it's more like various short clips of fathers with their children. I think it's fathers with their sons specifically, of various nationalities, ethnicities, races, etc. It's a father-son thing or a father and child thing. So I'm going to play this one. This video is called A Letter to My Son, and it's from Egard Watch Company. It's their new ad. So I'm just going to play it all the way through because Elon wanted me to show this, and I think you guys should see it.
I was scared before I met you. But the moment I saw you for the first time, I knew it was game over. I would love you forever. I knew I would stand by your side no matter what. I knew that I would give up everything to make your life better. I knew that every moment of pain for you would be a moment of pain for me. I knew I would be your guide, your example, your standard in this world for what it means to be a man. See, but what I didn't know was just how much this world would test us. I didn't know how strong you were. I didn't know how I needed you just as much as you needed me. I didn't know how much better you would make me. The good, the bad. There's nothing I would change if it meant you weren't my son. And all I want in this world is for a piece of me to carry on with you.
It reads, thank you all the incredible fathers out there.
Second time in 12 hours. Thanks a lot, Brian.
So yeah, that was a
I got things in my eyes. Oh, there feels okay.
So yeah, that's the ad. You know, I've talked to Elon and he is very passionate about this, and he is an actor and director. He works in Hollywood. He's one of the people who have told me, you know, that it's not easy for him to talk about these issues in his sort of Hollywood community, but he does know lots of people that agree with him, but they have to do so in secret. So I just thought, you know what, if he's gonna make these commercials, I'm going to show them, and I want you guys, if you could, I put a link there, leave a comment supporting him, because what he does with these kinds of ads, you don't get to see this kind of advertising. And I think that, you know, you need to let him know that this is like what you want to see, you know. And, you know, if you can, maybe you're interested in getting a watch. He's got watches of all different price ranges, so it's not like super high-end stuff. You know, you should be able to get, you know, whatever. I don't know, just support him in however you can. I'm going to do so by sharing out his content and, you know, showing support and letting him know I like what he's doing, and he'd love to hear that. So, you know, leave a comment on this video. If you like the video, give it a like as well. And maybe share it around. I shared it on Twitter as well as my Facebook page. So, yeah, let's like get it some play, you know. So that was basically it. I don't know if you guys, I lost Natty as well. They had to leave, I guess. So I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts on this ad or anything. I got Karen still, so.
Yeah, well, you know, and my my son is just coming to take care of his dog because she needs some loves.
Yeah.
And our horrible other dog is like, I want to sniff her genitals and sexually assault her. Because that's what he does. He's pretty gross that way. But no, I like that ad. I can't even really say anything about it. It says everything. It lays it all right out there.
Yep.
And also I'm still a little misty. So I think this would be a good place to sign off.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign us off. One last thing, in case you guys don't know, Elon, the owner of Egard Watch Company, he's going to be at the ICMI, and he's going to be selling watches there. So maybe go meet him. I think we're gonna have him on a panel, and you know, show him some support, show him some love.
I'm buying one for my man, and yeah, I'm definitely going to do that because I'm kind of sick of his love affair with his Apple Watch, so I think he should have something a little more traditional.
There you go.
Yeah.
Get him out of the weird like cult.
I need to close my circles.
Thing. Yeah, get out of that weird Apple cult thing that they got going on over there. I don't know. the guy who took over that company is, whew, he's frightening. All right, so with that said, we're going to go ahead and close it out and go into the after show. If you want to be a part of the after show, then you have to become a badger. To do that, you go to feedthebadger.com and start a monthly subscription. Because today was a This Week in Men's Rights show, we're going to be doing this in the Direhawk's Den, which means everyone has access. So you don't have to have a certain level to be a part of the conversation. So that is feedthebadger.com. And yeah, come hang out in the Discord and join us in the after show. We got lots going on. It's always a good time. With that said, I'm going to sign us out. I want to thank you guys for coming on This Week in Men's Rights. I want to thank Elizabeth and Natty and Karen for coming on and hanging out with and talking about today's stories. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about any of the stories that we discussed today or anything else that maybe we didn't know about that we should probably bring up for the next Men's Rights show. In addition, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed and hit the bell for notifications. I'm going to go ahead and get us out of here. Thanks, guys, for coming on This Week in Men's Rights, and have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next time.